And I also am not going to sit in a coffee shop every day, which is, to me, back then, that's what all the Christians did. Everyone just sat in a coffee shop. And I'm like, I'm too talkative for a coffee shop. So I just got involved with these events, and that's what I did. And I didn't realize that that's how I was managing the disappointment of being single.
Well, we realized that it was harder to get a married couple to actually make a decision to change, their marriage versus being able to help a single person create a healthy foundation for marriage before they got married.
One thing that I have done is just write out the qualities in a person that I want and that I'm praying for. Because when you get in the moment, it can be really hard. Really easy to overlook things, those red flags. When
is it a red flag? And then when is it, they're just growing up? Because I know that there are guys that grew after they got married, grew after they had children.
Natasha, for me, this is where it irritates me, right?
Hi everyone, I'm Jennifer.
I'm Natasha.
And I'm Tiffany.
And welcome to The Middle. Today, our episode is on singleness.
Hot topic.
A few of us know it a little too well, but we are so excited to bring you into our worlds of singleness, as well as just talk about the topic.
Yeah.
So.
Yes, well, this is something that we all have journey through, whether you are still single today, or maybe you were once married, or maybe you're married now and you can look back at your journey and see some things that you wish you would have done better or changed. But we truly want to highlight the beauty of singleness. And then we also want to talk about the struggles of singleness. So we first off want to say that singleness truly is a gift from God. And I've been married for 10 plus years, and I look back at my single season and I look at my married season and I'm raising kids and I'm like, man, I wish I would have did this. I wish I would have lived alone longer. I wish I would have traveled longer. I wish I would have developed more healthier friendships before marriage. So even though we all desire to kind of get to that end goal of finding that special mate and feeling as though when I find him or find her, my life's going to be complete. I really, really want to encourage you to be content with where God has you. And if you find yourself in a season of singleness, to really kind of look at it from a different view. So ladies, how would you guys share? Because you guys are in a very interesting time. And it's hard out here.
It is hard. And for me, if you don't know, I was married for 10 years. My husband suddenly passed away April of 2022. Actually, a few days ago was the 2-year anniversary of his passing. And so being back in a place of singleness, it's very different, the second time around. And so I'll be honest, because that's what we are. We're real here, right? It has been very hard. And I can't say that I'm there, that I've seen the gift in singleness right now. And so I think it's important to mention that, because it is easy when you're on the other side, everything grass is always green on the other side. However, in this season of singleness, again, I have been able to see parts of it that I'm like, Lord, I see you. I see your goodness. I can see where you're refining me in this. But it is very hard, especially when you're used to having a helpmate for 10 years. And I'm not just a single, living it up for you bachelorette. I've got 4 kids. And so that's a whole nother ball game. But even still, there are good things that can come out of it. And I know that the Lord is using this season of my life. So I don't want to rush through it. And I don't want to overlook that there is work to be done in it. And believing that it's not going to be where I'm at forever.
So for me, my journey has been, I'm not married, I don't have kids, and I have just been in a circle of all my friends, for the most part, got married very young. I played wedding when I was young, as a little girl, and I just loved it, the innocence of it. I looked at wedding magazines as a little kid because my mom didn't want me to look at 17 magazine when I was 12, and she was like, pick another one. So I was like, here. But the thing with that is I went to a school where everybody got married young. One friend even got engaged when we were a senior. Wow. I mean, very young. And I was on that pathway and got engaged right out of high school. And it did not go to marriage. And it's great. We're on good terms. And then life kept going. Yeah. And then it was like the dating mindset of, are you my husband? Like right away, God told me you're my wife. God told me you're my husband. That circle. And so then all of a sudden then God didn't, whether it was from me or from them. And that's a cycle. So I think for me, I got to the point in my 20s where I was like, I don't want to go through this anymore. Yeah. I'm just going to be single. I don't even know what to look for. And so one thing for me was I was never some wild girl. So I spent a chunk of maybe 7-8 years just being busy. Okay. And being busy that's more so how I got in the nonprofit world of emceeing all these events, because it was like, well, I'm not going to go bar hopping and I don't want to go sleep around. And I also am not going to sit in a coffee shop every day, which is, to me back then, that's what all the Christians did. Everyone just sat in a coffee shop. And I'm like, I'm too talkative for a coffee shop. So I just got involved with these events, and that's what I did. And I didn't realize that that's how I was managing the disappointment of being single.
Yeah.
And so towards the end of that era, because what I learned from still to this day, never being married, it's like, well, when, right? When are you going to get married? Yeah. Then it's like almost, what's wrong with you? Yeah. And it becomes like you have a bad handicap. And it's like, that's offensive, and that can create an issue internally towards people and then towards God. Why me? Like, no offense, but some of these girls are crazy getting married. Yeah. And I have some friends that are even on their second and third marriage. I'm like, I'm just trying to do one time, let alone 2 or 3. And so the struggle, I mean, it's been real. And I've dated really great guys. I don't have this list of crazy exes. I don't. They're good men, and most of them are married now. And most of the breakups ended well. But the journey has been really interesting because I've stayed in the church. And the church, I'm just going to flat out say it, they do it wrong. They don't know how to deal with single people. So what they do is they get a single night. And it brings out a lot of crazies.
Yeah,
like, I don't
you
know
can
what
probably
the deal
speak to
is.
that, because that's the heart behind.
Yeah, the One University, like, we believe that it's an epidemic. Like, I think within the church, the church should be a safe place for not just married people and kids to come, but people that are single as well. And I do think that they are handled as if we just don't have a spot for you. It's kind of like you're in the middle. And once you cross over, then we have resources for you. And that was something that my husband and I, realized with starting the One University, to where we did start out serving married couples, but we realized that it was harder to get a married couple to actually make a decision to change, their marriage, versus being able to help a single person create a healthy foundation for marriage before they got married, so that it would decrease the probability that they would get divorced in the future. And we believe that instead of waiting for the one, you can become the one. And I believe that there is power in being a single man or woman who is actively waiting. Like, I think within the church, they've done a disservice to us as believers in, telling us, don't date, wait for God to reveal to you who your husband is. Now, I'm in no way saying that God cannot do that for you, but I believe that it has handicapped a lot of women in the church, and it's kind of given men this free pass, right? Where it's just like, the women are waiting and they're waiting for their prince to come, when in actuality, it's like, okay, girl, you got to get up. You got to, whatever you're longing for, you need to be preparing for. If you want a man that works out and looks a certain way, how are you tending, to your temple, right? So I think, like you said, us even talking about these real issues that are happening in singleness. And I love your guys' vantage points from your journey, and even hearing how you said that, like, hey, I am missing something that I had, right?
Yeah, and honestly, that's just I got married really young. So I was 22 and turned 23, I think, like 3 weeks after we got married. And so, I pretty much my whole 20s, a lot of my 30s, I was married. And it's a different world out there.
Yeah.
Me and my husband used to joke. Yeah. Thank goodness we don't have to date in this day and age. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, is he up there in heaven, like, laughing now? Like, and I know he's not. But, it's a totally different world. Just the accessibility that people have to you. You've got dating apps. You've got social media. You've got all these platforms that you can, quote unquote, get to know people on. But you don't know someone until you are physically, in their presence. And so there is value even in that. So what I've come to learn in this season, and I'm at the very beginning stages of this, because I just honestly, in full transparency, just now feel released to even start going down that road again. But it's a different world, and you've got to have boundaries and standards, and you really have to be aware of what's out there, because what may seem may not be. And so I think that's another thing, especially when, for people like me who maybe they're just now back out in the world of dating again. It's not like it was 10 years ago.
You got to have
navigating that.
You do.
It's
everybody's values
discernment
is so different discernment.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even with the waiting, because even with you sharing your journey, that you don't have a dating history that's bad, right? Where it's like the guys that you interacted with were good men. So how have you dealt with just that truth, right? Just on a practical, like daily basis, how have you protected your heart from, and I know that it's not perfect, but I'm sure you've been able to create,
Well, so one thing, I've dated guys that love the Lord. That was a first thing, and everybody loves the Lord differently, and everyone's at different levels, and those that love the Lord don't always. And not to throw the whole church under the bus, but some of those church boys are
bad boys.
Are something else. But I will say, really, in case an ex is watching, I've dated some really upstanding individuals, but the bigger thing out of all of it with the heart is wisdom and when to open your heart. I know the Bible says, oh my goodness, that scripture just...
Guard your heart?
Well, no, don't let the heart awaken before it's time.
Yes,
that
it's
scripture.
Solomon.
That's so important, because those butterfly feelings and things can make you kind of want to open your heart to someone. It's like, that's not the stage you're at yet. So what I've learned in my singleness is that there's wisdom and discernment of when some things go fast for people and they're married in 4 months, 8 months, and then some take years, and just being discerning of where you're at with this person. And the bigger thing out of all of it is God is so good. And I wish I would have seen that. I knew that, but really received that younger, because it was like, why me, that victim mentality. And to see how the Lord has brought me through, and it's like, the Lord is so faithful. And honestly, he's so faithful that I went through a breakup a few years ago, and it was a journey of a relationship that was probably out of all my relationships the hardest. But what's so interesting, and so the outside person would look in and be like, oh my gosh, aren't you glad that that's over, let's say. The Lord used even the hardest relationship to set me free of mindsets and things that for whatever reason, the easy peasy ones didn't even touch. So I think just embracing and letting the Lord teach us, because I think, like you mentioned, it's like we're taught, you're single, wait on the Lord. Well, what does that even look like? Because for so long it was like you just sitting in your prayer closet, and that's good. We need the prayer closet, but waiting is active. And I didn't realize that until my 20s and 30s. So where I'm going with that is allowing the Lord to be the Lord, whether you're single, whether you're dating, whether it's a good relationship that lasts, whether it's short and sweet. The Lord can use anything, and you can learn from anything. So that's probably my biggest thing is hold tight to your values. Don't settle. Don't compare, because listen, a lot of people get married young and they're either divorced or they're miserable and they're stuck. That's not everybody. But for me, I don't have that story, and I'm grateful. So
never know.
I think there's blessings on both sides. Let's be honest.
And like you said, Natasha, what I've been doing is what are you doing to ready yourself? Because I can say I want someone who's financially stable, who's spiritually sound, who is emotionally mature. Am I those things?
Yes.
And you've got to ask yourself that. And if you're not, what are some things you need to do? And so the Lord put it on my heart very early on in my journey of widowhood, that this is not only a journey of grieving your loss, because that obviously was the majority of it, but also preparing your heart and even your children's heart for what you're wanting in the future. And so if you wait, years down the road to start to get healthy and maybe processing through this grief of losing your husband, you're not going to be a healthy enough mate or person to even begin the process of dating someone else if I haven't grieved and truly processed through my losses. And so I've had to just surrender that and like you said, actively wait. And so I think what actively waiting is working on yourself, trusting that the Lord is all the things. He is our sustainer. I mean, of course, we want a physical person to be able to do life with, but I have seen the Lord provide for me, protect me, and do things that, and earthly man, husband would do in my husband's absence, my late husband's absence. And so that's been really sweet because it's different, or was different for me being single and trusting God for those things versus having that in the flesh, then that being taken, and then watching God step in and say, just like a husband in the natural would want to protect you, I want to protect you, I want to bless you. And it's honestly, that's probably been the sweetest thing for me in this journey of singleness. But it doesn't negate from the fact that it is hard. It is very lonely at times, especially having children. You guys, I'm so tired.
Yes, no.
Oh my God, give her a helpmate, Lord.
Give me some energy and strength because my late husband was hands-on. I mean, he wasn't the dad that just came in and like checked out. No, he was like on it. So I can see that shift even in my home. But God is so sweet and faithful to just come in and fill those areas. And so my prayer has just been, Lord, you come in and you be whatever I need you to be. I'm trusting you in this process. And I know that at the right time, you will bring the right person. But that's a process to get there.
And that's really true, because I think just even hitting on the truth of singleness, right? Because the thing is that you have the desire for it, right? And I think it is being able to give yourself permission to desire that, right? To where it doesn't have to be something that's lustful. It's literally a desire that you're like, God, I desire that. And I think, it's real. You know what I mean? Like, we were made for connection, right? I think sometimes it's easy to just think it's the man that really wants to get married because of X, Y, and Z, but it's also the woman that's desiring that emotional connection, that is desiring that covering, that like that leader. And I just think that even just with what you guys have gone through individually and being able to kind of share with our audience, like, what are some boundaries that you've had to incorporate, right? Because I do think even for me, because I got married at 27, and I remember virgin everything, right? No kiss, no nothing. But once I got after like that 23, 25, I was like, Jesus, this is, I'm holy, but God, like, this is hard, right? Because your body starts changing, right? And I think that there can be shame even with that confession, right? Of like, okay, like I'm lonely. I wish I was in bed with somebody. I wish I had a partner to go to dinner with, so just even kind of acknowledging, the reality of that and how God has still been able to keep you, right? So I think too, of even understanding, okay, what are boundaries when it comes to like the dating world, right? What are like red flags that you should look out for?
Well, I'll just go into that one, everybody's boundaries in dating are so different, and it doesn't matter from the church, not the church. And I've always had strict boundaries. I've been open about them. And again, I've dated, thank you, Jesus, very respectful guys. But even in that, the body is real. So I think the biggest thing is we're human.
Period.
And God knows that. And yes, we are designed to be holy. But in our humanness, I would just say just straight to the female watching or the male, but when you date, and you cross boundaries that you wouldn't, and you're in the moment and things like that, go to God and go to God quickly and repent, and He will wash that clean. Because the biggest thing is when you do cross lines, the shame, the guilt, just all these things, the enemy's just so good. He's so good at getting in there and making you feel just all the things. And God is so quick to just wipe it off and go, keep going, let's go.
Amen.
And so I just want to kind of squash that right away, because that shame is strong and that guilt is strong. And I think also, I will say this, something that in the church, there's such a heaviness, as it should be, about waiting till you get married. That's God's intent. We know that. Wait till you get married, be pure. But a lot of people, and I've not been perfect, have crossed boundaries. It's like the biggest red letter of sin. And it's like, so what the Lord showed me was there was this idolatry, I think, in the church about being purity, and having purity. And it is pure. That's a heart issue. So I could be the most pure virgin person, but judge the heck out of Sally Sue and whatever she's been through. I'm sorry, just because you're a virgin, but you're judging over here does not make you any more holy because of that. And so the Lord really taught me that it's not about purity of just sex, it's a purity of heart. And so once that transition happened for me, that it was like, this is a heart issue. And that goes to every part of my life. If I have just purity sexually right, but the rest of my life, I mean, where did that, I don't even know how it started, but that needs to stop.
Well, even just purity even equates to innocence, right? So if you're pure in heart, even if you make a mistake, right, you can innocently go before the Lord. Like with a pure heart, say, God, Daddy, I did this, whatever it is, because even you talking about sin is sin.
Right.
If you have sex before marriage, okay, that's a sin. If you lie, that's a sin.
Exactly.
If you think of someone outside of your spouse in an unhealthy way, it's sin. Yeah. So I think too, it's like we have to stop trying to weigh sin. Of like in our world, in God's eyes, it's all the same.
And two, on the flip side of that though, understanding, okay, what you're striving towards and the importance of that, because with that sin, of course, the Lord is so faithful to deliver us, and thank God for that. But there are real consequences from that, and so saving ourselves from that hurt, and even if it's not fully, sexual, just emotional consequences and emotional things that we can get ourselves into that have consequences, weighty consequences that we've got to then deal with. And so, one thing that I have done is just write out the qualities in a person that I want and that I'm praying for, because when you get in the moment, it can be really hard, or really easy to overlook things, those red flags that maybe, when you had them written out would just be flagrant. But in the moment, it's like, well, it's not so bad, because your flesh is trumping, maybe some of those moral standards that you have. And so ultimately for me, knowing what I'm looking for, praying over that list and trusting that the Lord is going to bring that. But also, just knowing your worth.
That's good.
And knowing your story. Like, God has not brought you this far or me this far to give us anything subpar. And God has the perfect mate for you, me, whoever is watching. And again, these are easy things to say and it can sound very cliche, but I remind myself of that. Like, I want the absolute best for my children, and I'm like, if I want that for them, and I'm like a human with sin, a sinful heart, I'm not perfect. How much more does God want that for me? And he's not going to ask me to compromise. And especially because my late husband was amazing. And so he set the standard, and I could never take anything less than what he was. And he was and it's not about a competition of, someone is divorced or widowed like me. It's not a comparison thing, but there are just some universal things spiritually that are just good and that you want. You want a man of integrity, morality, who cares about people, who's kind, compassionate. These are things that just across the board are good things. So it's not even about comparing one person to the next. These are characteristics, godly characteristics that are necessary. And when you start to see those be absent or waning in a person,
the whole ship can come down.
Then you better take heed, because people, this is like the clinical side of me, people will show you who they are. And are you going to listen?
Okay,
and it may take a couple of minutes, a couple of times, but I always say, just talk to someone, be around someone. They may be able to hide it or disguise it for a little bit. It will come out.
Especially if you're praying for it to come out. Because I remember when I was single, I would say, God, I would be dating a guy and I would say, God, show me something that I need to know that I do not see. And these guys would be fine. I'm like, Jesus, okay, Lord, like, this is it. But he'd be like, no, he has a lot of abandonment issues.
Because it can be subtle stuff. It's not always
very
crazy things. It could be insecurities. It can be just a word. Maybe how they treat the waiter at a restaurant. Like, it can be the most subtle thing. And so listening, it's, we say your gut, it's the Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit is like,
with that. So, and because I remember the story of you meeting Dwight, and he transitioned to this amazing man. And not that he wasn't before, but he had a transition period into.
Well, we were so young. He grew up and definitely grew into the man that God had called him to be.
But that's what I want to talk about. And I want you to talk about it too. I want you to talk about your experience with Dwight, and I want you to talk about with the One University, because I have a friend named Janae that lives in Scottsdale, and she's single, and we're always talking about the dating stories that we have. Our thing, we were just talking the other day about this. There's red flags, so we know that. Can you speak to the fact of these men that are also growing in their faith?
Jesus.
So it's like, when is it a red flag? And then when is it, they're just growing up? Because I know that, like, there are guys that grew after they got married, grew after they had kids.
For me, this is where it irritates me, right? Because I'll be honest, I feel like some people are single because they're choosing to be single, right?
Yeah.
To the degree to where I know that there is a deficit. To me, You need
real.
you need to be open, okay?
Yes.
I think just how Tiffany was talking about the list, like we believe that there's negotiables and non-negotiables.
And my list has that. Red
Yes.
flags and things that I prefer. But Lord, at the end, I always say, your will be done.
Yes, and like she talked about character, integrity, how do they treat their neighbor? Those are foundational qualities that every human should have, right? Now, when it comes to negotiables, like that can align with height. It can align with teeth. It can align with the job they have. It can align with how they dress, because these are all
Fixable.
like they're all qualities. Like you can go get your teeth fixed. You can just change their style, right? So to me, I think not overlooking. I think it's really understanding what you need. And for me, I say, God, He didn't just give me what I wanted. He gave me what I needed.
Oh, that's good.
And I feel like that comes with maturity, because I do believe that some women, especially in our society today, it's like, he got to be a boss like me. He got to be making X amount of money like me. But I'm like, girl.
I used to be a height snob. I've come down. I'm talking
I don't think anyone can trump 6'7". Like,
well,
that's what
I dated 6'8" in college. That's what I'm saying.
So
It was
you had
like
a big standard. That's hard to come down from. But I think it is very necessary for us to understand that, you know, we all are human, and we all need to be able to extend grace to one another.
Absolutely.
And I think it's knowing that the man that I married, and, you know, we're 10 plus years in this, is not the same man that I said I do to. And I know that you can even share your journey of give men permission. Men are not perfect.
So let's go there deeper, because that's what I want to talk about.
There's a difference in character growth, and to me, a red flag is something that is of danger to you.
Yeah.
Someone who you love. I have children.
Yeah.
So I'm not only considering who you are to me, but who are you to them?
Yeah.
And what does your character, how are the things in your life going to affect not only me, but my children? And like you said, height.
Yeah.
My late husband was 6'7".
Yeah.
Okay, that is my norm, that was, but that's not a standard for me. But he was also a man of integrity.
Yeah.
He didn't lie, he didn't cheat, he didn't steal. So if you're doing those things, that's, to me, can the Lord change your heart? Absolutely.
Yes.
But I also think it is okay to not want to have to, quote unquote, fix someone. So being able to decipher, and I think with that comes wise counsel.
Yes.
We all have character flaws. We all have things that we need to work on. I can be short-tempered or impatient. Those are things I can work on, and I am working on. That's different than, say, someone being physical when they get mad. That's a deal breaker. That's a red flag that you need to run the other way. Can the Lord change their heart? Absolutely. But maybe not for you.
Yeah.
And even with, me and my late husband's story, yes, we definitely had it wasn't the norm. It was not like our testimony, which is, I spoke about that in my episode. I thought that was my testimony. Like we had this crazy experience in college, broke up for 3 years, got married, and, lived happily ever after. But that transformation that took place was definitely one that is not, it's not the norm. And so I think it is important to be realistic with the fact that God can change someone's heart if they're willing. But that doesn't mean that you have to sit there and endure abuse or whether that's spiritual, physical, emotional, as that person, as the Lord gets a hold of that person. So knowing when to decipher what is something that someone can work on and change and develop, because that's going to come with friendships, with, relationships. And what is something that's like, that is just not safe for me.
Yeah.
Or,
and I think
anyone around, big deal.
With like faith, because I've met singles where it's like maybe they're in different denominations, right? And it's like, okay, I'm a Baptist, and and she's a Pentecostal, so will this like work? Or he's a missionary and I'm a business person, will this work? And it's kind of like, to me, that's limiting, right? Because God and his creative ability can, connect you guys for a bigger purpose. And then I think too, when it comes to maturity, again, it's coming back to those foundational keys, right? The thing is like, let's say you met someone and you finished college, but he has like 2 more years left, right? And he's working a full-time job. Like, to me, that isn't, something that you can't work with, right? I think it's being able to give grace, because yes, you may be at a certain level, but I think it's also having wise counsel. It's also looking at the totality of this man or woman's life, and also praying God, even about the potential, because it's easy for us to be consumed with a man's potential or a woman's potential, and then we marry them based off of potential, and then they never meet that potential, right? So it's like, you also have to use wisdom with that, of realizing, okay, here's what I'm willing to live with. Because when you say I do to that person, you are saying I do to everything.
Yeah.
So if you need to take a break, if you need, to pray about a relationship to where you see that it is going into marriage, but you don't have a peace, I think it's being able to know that you have the autonomy to make a decision to say no, because this really is your life.
Yeah.
And, but I loved how you talked about how with you and your late husband that you guys, were the anomaly, right? And I think, because I have people that come to me too, and they're like, well, God's told me to do this and wait for my husband. And I'm just like, you really have to know that
Yes. Like I wouldn't
God
do that
has graced
again
you
unless
for
God
it.
told me that is not what I'm trying to do this time around. I mean, it's very, and if he were here, he would say the same. We used to talk about that. Like, thank God it worked out, but it was definitely not the norm. And so, with social media and TikTok, and you see all these different stories and people, giving their advice, and you have to ground yourself in truth. Find godly married couples. I mean, thankfully, I've got so many sweet friends who have healthy marriages, who have come alongside me. And one of my friends in particular, her husband and my late husband were good friends. It's someone I trust. I trust his character. I trust his heart. And we already have a deal. Yeah. But like, hey, if there's someone that you like by like date 2 or 3, I would love to meet them. And just to be a covering, a voice, because as women, men can spot things in other men that we can't, and we can spot things in women that men can't. And so now that takes vulnerability. That takes accountability, allowing someone access to a very private and tender part of your life, especially when you're a grown adult. It's one thing when you're 17 and you live at home and you've got to meet my dad before you can take me out, but you got to meet my best friend's husband, it's like, but the right person is not going to be threatened by that. Right. So giving yourself the boundary of even just protection, like it is a different world out there. And so just praying and asking the Lord, I'm not saying everyone has to do that. For me, that's just a choice that I've decided to make to allow someone else to speak into, different situations when that time comes. But it's a different world. That's what I keep,
And I
going back
think
to.
with that, so many people, especially since I haven't married, everyone has this idea of who I'm going to marry. Not a name, but just the kind of person. Yeah. And I've changed over time. So even when I was little, or even in high school or college or whatever, the kind of person I was then is different. And so I've had to, I remember that I I'm sorry to all of my exes, I would parade them to get approval by everybody. Did you work with the family? Did everyone like you? Did everyone like you in my friend group? Did everyone like you in even work environments? And it was very immature, but that was my safety, was because of that counsel. And that's not immature, but it was everybody. So now that I'm an adult, it's like my counsel is smaller by choice. And I know that people, so I'm just going to say this to the single that's watching, your friend that's some wild girl, not that she can't have intuition about a guy, but you want people that are praying for you, really praying for you, not their will for you, but praying for you to be the ones that you ask about certain guys, because it's so easy for us to have opinions and know that you shouldn't. And next thing you know, you're like, should I not be with this person when I could have, and different things. And I mean, I've dealt with this big time, and I have very godly people in my life. Everybody means well, but just because everyone means well doesn't mean their wisdom is what was right. And so I think that's super important to narrow down specifically your walk with the Lord so tight that you can hear the Lord. And then when you decide to be with that guy and open your heart, then have your key people, and then everybody else just gets to benefit from it. Because if you let all the voices in, they're going to lead you, because money's more important, and this is more important, and that's, they've got kids, don't do that, and just I've heard it all, and it's like, I need to hear from the Lord myself, and then the counsel will just affirm that.
That's good.
And so I think that's really important.
Something I come back to is that what the Lord has for me, no man can stop. No principality under heaven can come in between. And that doesn't give me a hands off, well, then just, whatever will be, and I'm not going to put in the work. But knowing that I'm not God, knowing that the Lord is going to put the right person at the right time. And so also don't put too much on yourself, because we're not God. Do the work that you need to do to be a healthy, good person, a woman of God, a man of God, and trust that the Lord is going to bring that right person at the right time. But I think so many times we just put so much pressure, and other people, especially when you get to a certain age. And I had people asking me, I'm not even kidding you, before I buried my husband, are you going to get remarried? And I'm like, what? I haven't had his funeral yet. And so people will just do and say things. So I agree to your point. find trusted people to speak into your situations, not just relationally, financially. I'm not going to
All the
take
things,
financial
yes.
advice from someone who, is going through bankruptcy. Like, go to the people who the fruit of their life demonstrates what you would like yours to look like, and allow the Lord to work through them.
I remember as we wrap up, I went through, and I highly recommend all of you add the One University page on Facebook,
Yes.
TOU, follow it. I went through their Praying for Your Future Spouse week-long event. It was amazing. But you talked in one of the days, and I kind of want to leave us with this, that we as single people can set the trajectory forward. We can break the cycles of dating around us. And just because a breakup happens doesn't mean it has to be horrible. I've prayed in so many of my breakups, which is why they're all amicable for the most part. And I think that's beautiful because it doesn't have to be awful. And women, just because if guys are trying to prey on you physically and that's not where you're at, you don't have to, that's not your worth. You don't have to go there just to feel worthy. That's where you need to stop and check yourself and go to the Lord. And guys, just because girls are being the girls that the society is, it seems like these days, you can add the value that they are as daughters in Christ and stop the insecurity that can come as well. So I just want to encourage us that we have the power, and this came up at TOU, that we can stop the bad cycle and start a new one. And we have that empowerment from the Lord to start his. So oof, I feel good.
Episode, y'all. I mean, I know you guys have some comments that you guys want to talk about, because we know that singleness right now can feel very isolating. You can feel alone, but we want you to know that here in the middle, we're able to relate to you, and we're here for you, and we're praying for you. So let us know in the comments how today's episode ministered to you, and we'd love to be able to comment back. Make sure to follow us on Instagram at inthemiddle.tv and Facebook.
Yes. So just remember, there's laughter,
Hope and belonging
in the middle. See you next time.